how China can have the next great brand. Might not be us, might be someone else, but I think the one learning that I had over the years is like maybe you just need to live long enough. You just need to survive long enough to be great. So yeah, my name's Michael Lee. I'm a co-founder of the winter sport brand Override, which is currently a leading domestic winter sport brand in China. And me and my co-founder started this brand around 4 years ago. That was before the Beijing Winter Olympics in 2022. So being an athlete and someone who's focused on sports business, I understand how hard that China would push for winter sport. Having a mega event like the Beijing Winter Olympics, we saw the vacancy of, there's no one winter sport brand that can represent China, and specifically winter sport and snowboard and skis. There's really basically zero brands that people can recognize. And so if you go overseas to, Whistler or in Japan, Niseko, you would just see all foreign brands. But then we just wonder, okay, because after doing a lot of market research, we realized around 80% of their products are also made out of China, and specifically in factories like Dongguan, in factories like Huizhou. There's a proven track record of China could make good products. It's just the problem about, how much R&D can you put in making products that can customize towards the Chinese market, and especially because China is starting with more beginners. So actually a lot of the big international brands, they don't adjust and customize their products towards beginner levels. So that's why it's not that user-friendly for a lot of Chinese users. So seeing a lot of these insights and knowing that China does have the capability to make good winter sport product, we went into and do a lot of R&D, and we came up with a series of products for Override, from board to binding to shoes to jackets to goggles and gloves. And we're basically the only current Chinese brands with we call it full SKU, so from head to toe you can wear all Override. Override, we use it in coding to kind of override an existing command. So it's like a rewrite, or like you kind of go above what you have existingly. We're like, oh, that's a great name, because it comes with riding a snowboard too. We're just like, okay, that's a good name. And then we'll just be like, okay, we should use that for our brand. And then we just, the slogan becomes never set limits. And that goes to myself too, I think. And I think that represents China right now too. It's just like, we have, the young people in China have so much possibility now. We're no longer just the, tame, nerdy kids anymore. Chinese kids have so much swag, so much energy, and people in the world like to learn from China as well. Same as how Chinese people learned about the world 30 years ago. And that's just, I think it's the right time for China brand to be recognized globally now. I think my first time skiing really was with my parents when they were still in Canada. I think I went on snow when I was age like 4 or 5. And I think people who grew up in North America would have similar experience. It's just like, it's really when we call it a lifestyle, it's really like every family kind of do it in the winter because there's no other better activities to do. But then obviously in China it's very different, because skiing and snowboarding is still seen as a very elitist activity. But even that, I've seen tremendous change in the past 5 years because of firstly there's so many new ski resorts that's being built during the Winter Olympics. So especially like in Chongli, which is right next to Beijing, and they built a specific high-speed railroad that's 1 hour away from Beijing, so people could literally go in Friday after work and get there at 10 p.m., ski 2 days, and weekend trip just kind of go back to work. So having that accessibility really increases, how many more people can get to these. Your whole trip might be, around 2K for a weekend. Then that becomes very affordable for people to at least make this more than a habit. There's a lot of things that as a brand Override couldn't push, but what we can do is focus on making better products every year. And so I think over the past few years we've successfully kind of cracked the code of what Chinese people need for winter sport. So yeah, it's just these detail things that we're doing over the years that make us where we are right now. I think making something fit is surprisingly harder for a normal customer to think. Daily clothes, we would care less about fitting, but as you know, when you're skiing at negative 10, 15 degrees, having the right fit would really decrease your chances for injury. So for us, we use a lot of data when we started our R&D. It's like really, like you said, fitting for not just the face, the nose. We also have a specific fitting for hand size, for gloves. Very, very important fitting for shoes. It's just a lot of these details that we realize, okay, if we are a Chinese brand and we are from China and we know the pain points of Chinese customers, then these are our opportunities that international brands wouldn't capture. But within winter sport and within outdoors, actually people just care about experience a lot more. So they want good service, they want good product, and they don't want to pay 智商税. So if you have a strong international brand, sure, people would know who you are. But then now, I think the younger and more sophisticated Chinese customer also want to know more about how exactly does your product help solve their problem. And that's something that I think we have had our salespeople and even ourselves as founder, we go on the front line a lot to talk to every individual customer to know their insight, know their pain point, and then we bring it back to our engineers and then we help with building the next year's prototype. So this kind of closed cycle help us become more cohesive as a brand. So we seem like we grow very quickly within 3 years. When we opened our first retail store during COVID, which was 2022, I was in Jilin and Beidahu for like 80 days in a row, just managing the store from design to construction to soft launch to making sure the first month we have the right sales process when every rare customer come in. Like really we're trying to beg people to come in and to convert them into our customers because there's just no people in ski resort because it was during lockdown. But then having those valuable experience and also very, very honestly, we did lose quite a lot of money on that first store, partially is because we're still raw, it was our first store, but secondly, there's something uncontrollable like the COVID lockdown. But then we kind of came back together and we're like, okay, we could do well in retail store. Then we started opening 5 stores in the next season. And then afterwards, this season, now we have 14 stores. Because then now every store that we open, we always make money. And personally, what I enjoyed the most was when I opened my first store in Jilin, I was personally there for like 80 to 90 days, right? And I was just kind of trapped in that resort with a lot of other people who come across the world to work in that resort. Everyone's just there for work, and then there's really not a lot of place to hang out in that ski resort. So our store actually became like the hangout spot throughout that winter. And then later, then I started just offering free coffee and free beer for all the friends that would come in after work. As the sun set, like 4 p.m. they finish their session, and then they just come with their friends or bring their customer over, and then we just became a spot. And that's when I realized, so when you want to build a brand culture, it's really something very organic like that. It's just a group of cool people hanging out and enjoying the spot, and then obviously it smoothly transitions into what your brand represents, and people would talk about it. That's why our hosts, like sales and our store managers, are all very welcoming towards anyone, no matter if they're a customer or not, because we believe if you know us long enough and then you build a bond with us, then if you ever need something, you'll think of us too. And that's proven to be a fact. We actually have proven to have one of the highest return customer rate. And that's really not out of like, oh, some trickery. It's just like, be genuine, 就是真心换真心。So I've established great relationship with a lot of the even more mature brands. And what I realized is like, I don't think there's a hierarchy between brand founders. It's like, it doesn't matter if your brand is internationally famous and sold like multiple billion a year, because everyone put in the same amount of energy into building their own brand. So everyone who's built a brand share a very similar journey. They all go through like first 3 to 5 years, just there's not going to be a lot of like upward. You're just grinding and building and you know, like having a team together, and slowly you're going to meet that point when we call it a J curve. It's just like you want to survive enough till when you reach a J curve, and then when you're trending upwards, just don't give up, still stick in there. Don't make dumb financial decisions. Watch your cash flow. And then once your brand is ready and there's some, you know, big incident that pushes your brand up, and we meet a lot of international brand founders, they always wish us well. Actually, not a lot of people have been very hostile to us, because they actually, like, no brand founders want to kill another brand founder, really. Most genuine advice, really, for anyone who dare to dream. The biggest treasure that we have is youth, and I think there's just a lot of things in life that you can only do in a certain age, you know, and there's always an option to go back to a stable life, get a family, you know, raise a kid and all that. But there's also certain things in life, a certain risk that you can only take. And I use the analogy like when I learned how to snowboard too. It's like everyone thinks it's so dangerous, especially when you start doing tricks, start jumping. And actually, I stopped doing tricks after a few years in. It's because now I get injured multiple times, and mentally I can't conquer it anymore. Like now I become actually more afraid to, if you want me to jump and do a 360, I would start fearing about what if I don't land, and what if I break another stuff, because I already have shoulder injury, I already have PCL injury in the knees. So I have broken pieces in my body from it. And obviously no regrets, but then it's like, having no regrets versus will I do it again is a very different conversation. And I think back to your question about, oh, like, should people still do a startup? For sure. I think there's no wrong time to do it, but then I think people do need to understand, will I be committed to this even if this doesn't take off in the next, no matter how long time? It's like people always think about, oh, like I want to build something. Everyone wants to build something because it's about leaving legacy. It's about leaving a mark in the world that I've arrived and I've accomplished something. Yeah, I think that's the biggest part about the power of brand, and it's universal. I feel more responsible as kind of Override becomes more associated to China winter sport, because the one big fact is that China is still the biggest, fastest growing major winter sport market in the world. This year, China is forecasting around 20 million people that will participate in, you know, winter sport. But 20 million is still only, you know, out of 1.4 billion is still 1.5%. So we think even if China gets to 5%, that's at least a 3 to 4 times the market growth. And also another thing is people are getting more savvy. So they start with renting gears to, you know, first few times, then now they know how they like to ski and snowboard, and now they start buying their own gears, and then they would buy more for every season. So these things are like both growing quantitatively and qualitatively. So yeah. So I think that's just kind of my story with Override, but me personally, you know, just I was an athlete growing up, always loved sport, and I saw the tremendous potential for China to have, not just now, but also in the future, that people will care more and more about their wellness. People will care more and more about, exploring outdoors, and I know that's an inevitable trend. So it's just about, being at the right place at the right time, and hopefully our brand could provide to even a bigger audience in the future.